on the Meridian at Corner Station project. Very quickly, it's a good group tonight. We're over 40 people now. For those who have not been here before, let me quickly remind you about what the 4 pillars of Know Before You Grow are, and also urban chat.
Yeah, I wanted to watch at 7:30, but we didn't finish. So it's the no.
Did you mute Dan? Yeah, thank you. 4 pillars: adequate housing to meet community needs, non-car or non-automobile transportation alternatives, climate action, and sustainable municipal finances. Luckily, they all tend to work in concert. Projects like tonight hit at least 3, if not all 4 of those, so always good. Dignitaries, and if I've missed somebody, I apologize, but the 5 folks I've noted being in the room, City Council Member Kevin McDonald, Planning Commissioner Blake Hooper, Transit Manager Jared Hall, Senior Advisory Committee Chair Chris Rebelo, and Climate Action Commissioner Panama Bartholomew. Thank you all for joining us this evening. There we go, Panama.
Dave, I think we also have another climate commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
Ned Orrit there.
Is Ned, I haven't seen Ned yet. Great. Ned Orrit's here also.
And then
Welcome,
Christina, Chris Rebelo.
I mentioned Chris. I got Chris. For those who have maybe missed all the fear of the last 12 to 18 months, let me quickly tell you how we've gotten to the Meridian project this evening. Originally, what was proposed for the Corona site was a project just called Corona Station. To a number of us in the community, some in the room this evening, it was so far away from what transit-oriented development should be, which is what the general plan called for, that we objected to it strenuously. As the situation evolved, that project became related to the downtown Hines development project, a affordable housing project on Boulevard South, all of which had to be approved at the same time in order to put us in line to get our long promised second smart railroad station. As a result, the council, some of them, got heartburn on the project, couldn't support it because of all the different pieces. Others felt we really had to get the second station. So it was approved on a very narrow 4-3 margin. But a lawsuit was then filed challenging the city on its approval of the Corona Station project. That caused the developer to decide that he really couldn't risk undermining his contract with SMART. So he backed away from that configuration and resumed conversations with Danco, with whom he had already been in earlier communication. That resulted in the project we see here before us this evening. At this point, after last 2 nights actually, all former approvals for Corona Station have been rescinded. So it's again a clean slate, and we are now starting to talk about the replacement project. With that, and actually, one more thing I should have mentioned, we are recording the meeting this evening. We will be providing a link to you in the future. So you don't need to take notes, but just enjoy the evening. With that, I will turn the floor over to Chris Dart with Danco, who will introduce his team as we go along. Chris?
Thank you, Dave. Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Dart. I'm president of Danco Communities. Oh yeah, Mackenzie's gonna show some slides. I apologize for any of you who were at the Planning Commission last night and got to hear our pitch then, because we're pretty much going to do the same presentation tonight as we did last night. So apologize if you've seen it twice. I'm here joining me tonight is my colleague Mackenzie Dibble, and then representatives from our design team, Frank Visconti, John Rowell, and Greg Brokaw. A little bit about the Danco Group. We're a group of companies with our main offices in Arcata, California. We specialize in construction, affordable housing, multifamily housing development, and property management. We're a company, we've been around for about 34 years, and our development wing is primarily does multifamily and affordable housing, specializes in affordable housing. To date, we've put into service about 1,200 units, hundreds of single family units that we've done over the years, many commercial properties. And we have a good portfolio of projects that we're working on throughout the state moving forward, including this one. We have projects all over parts of the state, and some out of state, but mostly in state. We got some projects going in Santa Clara County, Alameda, Sacramento, Mendocino, Humboldt, Del Norte, Ventura, and Sonoma. We've actually just broke ground. Some of you may know of a couple projects that we're working on in Santa Rosa, one on College Avenue, which with the same architecture group that's here to present tonight, the Raul Brokaw group, and then another project on Boyd Road. This project, which I'm going to go just brush strokes, and then our Frank from the architect team will go more into detail. But this project is as we proposed it so far, and we don't have any entitlements. We're really, I'd say, we've submitted our application. We have a concept in, but we're here tonight to listen, make improvements. But this project so far is 131 units. Falls under the category of large family, which means that this state definition of large family means that 25% of the units have 3 bedrooms or more. So this project has 29 1-bedrooms, 36 2-bedrooms, and 33 3-bedrooms, and a manager's unit. The proposed project that we have is all electric. We're proposing to be net zero, no gas. We always strive to build net zero. Most every project we do now is, and have done, has been a net zero project, or at least very close to achieving that. We believe it makes good common sense to do that. Not only is it the right thing to do, but it's where much of the state and country are headed. You can't generate gas on site, but you can generate electricity. And so we have a very robust design that would meet that. And we've, as I said, met that on many of our other projects, including LEED Platinum for home certifications, et cetera. The project will also, there was a lot of conversations on the last project around infrastructure surrounding the site. It was part of the approval of the last project. This project will also do those same improvements and then some. We like the site because one of the reasons that we're attracted to the site, and as an affordable housing developer, you always have to compete for funding in order to make a project come to life. And because of its proximity to transit and the SMART train, is one of the reasons that we think this project can move forward. One of the financing sources that we intend to apply for is the HSC program through HCD, which we do have experience with. We're currently under construction on a project in Arcata that we were successful winning the HSC fund. And we think this project is a great fit for it. Dollars from that program not only go to help finance the development itself, the buildings and the housing unit, but they also contribute to city overall needs that can tie transportation and to this site, to the affordable housing site, and actually the funds can help build the new station. All that financing, as I said, is tied to transportation infrastructure. And so we're excited to compete for those funds and help bring this deal to life, and maybe partially or all of the smart transit station as well. For example, the project that we worked in Arcata, it's a 46 unit housing project. I think we have 15 parking spaces. It's right in on the plaza area. The city was able to get an electric bus out of the project, and many sidewalk improvements, crosswalk improvements, bus passes as part of a program, as part of that project. And so those type of things that the AHSC funding can help with. In addition, this project would substantially help out the city's RHNA numbers. The state requirements to provide affordable housing are real. The city is far from meeting those requirements. And this project makes a substantial impact on helping the city meet towards meeting those goals and requirements from the state, specifically for these units that are low and very low income. The project comes with many supportive services, which my colleague Mackenzie Dibble will go through in a minute. You'll see that the service component of this project is very robust. Some of those projects are, or those systems, or we have many, in addition to the social services systems, we have a robust community room, full surveillance systems, many outdoor recreation activities that the architecture group will go over in detail. The income targeting for this project is to be averaged 60% and below. We'll have a few 80% units, some 60s, some 50s, some 30s, and down to 20s. Just for example, an 80% AMI or 80% income for a two-person household in Sonoma County is $72,000 a year, and 60% is $54,000, 50% $45,000, and 30% $27,000. That's mostly all the comments. We were going to show a video, but it was too large to show, so I think it's going to go out in an email blast of a project that we did in Eureka that we're very proud of with this same architecture group. It was a 51-unit supportive housing project that served veterans and folks that were experiencing homelessness. The project is, although it's not although this project is a large family project and only has a small portion of supportive housing, we thought you'd appreciate the video and the impact it had on people's lives, and you're able to see what this group is capable of. It was, again, designed by the Rob Brokaw Group, which we'll present shortly. We very much appreciate the opportunity to share our vision and get your feedback. We believe wholeheartedly in a collaborative process. The more feedback and ideas we get, generally the better the project is. And so, after our presentation, we'll be taking notes and listening and seeing if we can make changes and ultimately make the project better in the end. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mackenzie Dibble, my colleague, who's going to talk a little bit about the services that we're going to provide. And then after that, the architecture group will go over the specific proposal as it's drawn so far. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So I just want to check in. Can everybody see my slide here, which has the rendering of the project on it? Is that viewable for everybody? Okay, great.
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
All righty. Okay, so hi, everybody. I'm Mackenzie Dibble. I'm a project manager at Danco Communities, and I'm going to give an overview of the site and service amenities on the project. So the project site for Meridian at Corona Station is really ideal for this kind of project. There's a number of necessary amenities within either a half-mile or a mile of the project site, and I'll show those just quickly right here. We're close to transit. There's a bus stop, bus lines currently running by the site. And as Chris mentioned, there's also the SMART station that's going to go in. There's a couple of different schools, university, banks, shopping, dining, commercial, human services, and then a little bit farther away, we've got grocery and pharmacy. And then here's just kind of a quick view of the project site. This is our project site in purple. And then these red circles are what shows kind of a half-mile radius around. So a lot of businesses up here, and then schools and grocery, bank to the east of the project. So now that we kind of have an idea of where the site is, I'm going to dive into the service amenities that we've envisioned for the site. So Meridian at Corona Station, like Chris said, is a large family project, and we've got a good idea of what types of services will be provided on site based on previous projects. All of our projects have on-site social services similar to the ones we're planning for this project. We work with local services providers to understand the greatest needs of the community and how best the residents could be served. The idea behind the services is to enrich tenants' lives as well as provide support in keeping them employed, fed, and housed. We know from experience that supportive services are very important to keeping our communities healthy, especially since we're housing some of California's most vulnerable. I also wanted to mention that the services we're going to provide are going to be a requirement of almost all funding sources that we'll go after for the project, including tax credits. And that's just to reassure you that the services won't go away, and their existence and relevance are part of yearly audits that are performed by state agencies. So this is kind of a list of what we're looking at providing at this point. We're considering a number of different companies to bring on as services providers, and we want to provide the most robust services programming that our budget allows. So first off, we've got the idea to provide resident services coordination, and we've been working with a local Sonoma nonprofit called Reach for Home to provide services on our other Santa Rosa projects that we mentioned earlier. The resident services coordinator job description entails connecting people with underutilized services in the community, providing advocacy, connecting tenants with community resources and programs, and then planning events on site and things like that. On another one of our projects in Gilroy, we've been working with a services provider called Life Steps, and they provide adult education classes and health and wellness programming. So an example of adult education classes would be something like financial literacy, computer training, home buyer education, GED prep, resume building, English as a second language, nutrition, exercise, health information and awareness, art, parenting, on-site food cultivation and preparation, and smoking cessation. And then individualized health and wellness services are more personalized for individual tenants and would be kind of tailored to individuals. And that would include things like crisis intervention, practical counseling and emotional support, cleanliness and hygiene assessment, eviction prevention, government and insurance entitlements, and physical and mental health assessment. And finally, we've been in conversations with local Petaluma providers like COTS, which is Committee on the Shelterless, and Petaluma People's Services Center. So COTS provides case management, and as Chris mentioned, we're going to have this is large family, but some of the units are going to be dedicated to housing those experiencing or formerly homeless. And so case management is really important aspect to have to the services program when dealing with that kind of a population, because they can help clients work towards long-term independence and stability. And they offer income development assistance, which helps people find jobs, increase their wages, and apply for a range of benefits so they can stay stable in their housing. And then, Petaluma People's Services Center would be potentially offering miscellaneous services like senior services, homelessness prevention, employment training and counseling, and food programs. So those are ideas right now for the services on site at this point, but we are open to other ideas and will welcome any collaboration and suggestion from the community. And with that, this is the video that Chris was speaking about earlier. Here's a photo of our project site in Eureka. It's just recently been completed in June, and it's really beautiful. This is the link to the video, and we're going to be sending it out in an email after this presentation. So Raul Brokaw is going to be continuing on into the design discussion, and you can contact us with questions pretty much any way. We have social media, email, phone, website. So please let us know what other questions you have for us. Thank you.
Okay, hi. I'll be presenting the architectural vision for this in more detail. I'm Frank Visconti from Raul Brokaw Architects. We, as Mackenzie and Chris had mentioned, we have done several projects with them, and one of the great benefits that we see working with Danco is that they are in from the beginning as a developer. They know so much about this type of housing and are able to get projects built. They also are builders, and then they also manage the property. So what's great about this team is that, and with the other projects that we finish, is that we understand the whole life cycle of a building from beginning to being used, and it's a really unique sort of way to work together, because there's not a point where you say goodbye to the project and it has its own life. It continues to be part of Danco's goals as tenants move in, and it helps us understand how to always improve on building techniques, building uses and function, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a unique team, and I will and this is a very exciting project for us. So so just taking a closer look at our site plan here, what we've got is 131 units. It's been divided into 7 buildings, and the primary idea of this site, which is a triangular site, and it has the smart rail on the north side. That was an important part of the design, in that we wanted to try to keep our buildings as far away from the noise that generates. So our first move was really to create the parking that parallels the SMART rail. At one time, SMART was going to have their SMART trail on our side of the tracks, and it was only a few weeks ago that they made the determination that the SMART trail is on the opposite side of the tracks, because we were actually excited about trying to get access to the SMART trail, but that is not in our program anymore. But we would have a fence along the SMART trail for safety, of course, and we have developed a whole series of landscape that goes against the commuter rail, and we've moved the buildings as far as we could, and it actually created this really interesting space, because we also wanted to create a series of buildings on the street to have a streetscape presence. And one of the buildings is a 4-story building, and the other buildings are essentially 3-story buildings that have 12 units in them. And so by composing this, it becomes kind of a little village, in a sense, where you have this internal courtyard here, which I guess you could see my cursor, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, so
yes,
maybe.
we can see your cursor.
Okay, good. So yeah, here we go. I like doing this. So this becomes a very important space, because it's sort of insulated, and we decided to really make use of it. And so we provided a bunch of landscape sort of amenity experiences. So there's a very large lawn here, which is really just a multi-use lawn for Frisbee, for running around, for reading, sitting, and it's sort of the beginning of this little park. And the next area is a playground, which we would have playground equipment, and the next area along there is a tot lot, which would have kind of smaller playground equipment. And it would all be lined by trees and these large walkways that are actually not your typical 5-foot paths, but more like a 10-foot path, because we want to promote people biking and walking. And really, all the parking is on the back side to optimize sound separation from the trail, but it also hides all the parking. So there's no parking lots on the front of the street like you see in the industrial areas. So it really is discreet. And by doing that, we create this open space, and that it connects from one end to the other. And along this end here is a basketball court next to one of the buildings. Every building has bike racks outside. Plus, we've designed the units uniquely to have bike storage in the units, because it really is the most secure and really the best way to take care of your bike as well. So every unit has 1 or 2 bikes depending on the size of the unit. And then one of the nicest parts of this walk is a community garden that would have plant beds and fruit trees and a place for gardening, a small fence around it. And all this is happening along this wide walk. And one of the buildings here, this one here, actually that's the building that has the multi-purpose community room, which has a kitchen in it. There's a gym multi-purpose room. There's a laundry room there. Although we've planned every unit to be plumbed for washer dryers. And then there's support services and property management offices. So this building is actually very important because it has a visual connection to the open spaces, to the bus stop, and the bus stop. Well, I'll get into the transportation in a second, but it sort of gives a sense of security and centrality to the project. And then this last building here is another one of the 12 unit type models, except on the ground floor, we're having about 1,000 square foot coffee shop. I know you guys are talking about sizes of stuff like that. And a coffee shop is kind of a general term. There's certainly lots of shops that have where you can buy produce, milk, all those kinds of things. But we thought it would be good here because it would be next to the future train station, and that we certainly want to see a business thrive. So we thought that it would be important to sort of connect it in a sense to the use of the station. And it would have a little plaza in front of it where you could have outdoor seating. It would actually engage the street. McDowell, being a busy street, but landscaping and everything else, it sort of has a presence for the project. Other amenities, we have like a barbecue area that's also connected, and a dog run as well. And one of the most important things, of course, is that we're promoting walking, pedestrian use, and the idea also is that one of these paths connect to the train station parking lot, so people can just get to the train by walking. So it's not closed off from the adjacent property. And then of course there's the bus stop here. All the work that's shown here is actually carried over from the last project in the sense of the street improvements. So we're taking what were actually good things about the street improvements, which was a wider sidewalk for a multi-lane bike and pedestrian path, a larger bus stop, and we also kept the same entries to the project as had been reviewed by traffic before. I have a little dyslexia, so I know that I know Heather can clearly identify the left turn out and all that stuff, but that is consistent with the other plan, and I have drawings that show it, but I can never remember which one is a left turn out, left turn or right turn in. But anyway, those are part of that. We have trash enclosures for the whole thing, and let's see. Just want to get to the next page. Next page. Oh, I know why. Not responding. Hold on a second. No. Sorry, don't know. It's not working for me. Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay, so this is more illustrative of the planting plan, which we submitted based on the AB 2162 requirements. Actually, a selection of trees and plants, low water usage, irrigation plans, all to be water efficient. But you can see, in contrast to the previous project, that there is a lot of green space here, and that was obviously our primary goal in organizing this site. So we have transit connectivity along the streets, and yet we have all these great outdoor amenities to really celebrate the distances between buildings and the connections for people to come and go. This is a similar same rendering that you were shown before. This is looking at the bus stop from the street. You can see the 4-story building over there. This is from the opposite side where the other entry is. You can see the 4-story building, you know, definitely creating a streetscape. And one of the things about these buildings that we're envisioning is that they're fire rated, fully sprinkler buildings. They have metal panels on them, which are actually non-flammable, obviously, and have a great opportunity for colors and finishes. And it's like a 45-year guaranteed finish, anti-graffiti, all that kind of stuff. It's also recycled material, so it's everything about metal is as an architectural material is sustainable, including the roofs, which we were also going to do as standing seam roofs, and I'll show you why. Here is that the net zero means that we calculate the amount of energy that's anticipated by every single unit, and we offset it by the amount of energy to basically bring that back to the project through photovoltaic panels. Each panel is like 360 watts. So we calculate, you know, I'd say 200,000 or 200 kilowatts maybe, as you know, for the project as a whole, that would be consumed, and then we reciprocate by providing 200 kilowatts of power, which would also be net metered through back to the city. So we're basically using the roofs and the simple shed roof to as a platform for the net zero photovoltaic solution. You can see that here. And one of the nice things also about the driveways is that they're not lined with sidewalk. So we actually push the sidewalks back, and they're lined with trees on the left side here. So unlike your sort of typical sidewalk where you have you're walking along the curb, this is sort of safer. It's more insulated, and it's greener. We would have loved to put trees along the sidewalk of the project, but there's actually a lot of utilities there. So we actually put all the street trees that you'd normally see within our property line on the front. This is a view of the lawn where we'd have benches and trees, bike parking, and this building here would have garage doors that open up for the meeting room so that it connects indoor outdoor. Same thing for the gym and the coffee shop, which you'll see. So here's one of the walks that goes all the way down to the east side. This is the opposite side of the walk where you see the 3-story units and the 4-story unit here. There's the playgrounds and tot lot with these really wide, generous walks that you know that sort of really encourage people to go outside and be in the sunshine and, you know, talk to each other and not be inside all the time. And I could go into the unit design, which I won't do, but we have a technique in the unit design where all of the the living spaces are on the corners, and so they have the largest windows rather than being sort of bookended by bedrooms. So all the stuff we're trying to do is just bring more light, more landscape into this unique place. And this is a rendering of the concept for the community garden, which is not sort of out somewhere beyond having to search for it. It's like right at the front of the large building, right at the sort of end of these walkways. So it's an important part of the experience here. And then this is a rendering of the coffee shop store that would have a patio with some landscaping, outdoor seating, and it really participates in being on North McDonald. And then facing west, with these rendering programs that we use, we can really study how the sun works, and it would be really nice sunsets to come out and see the colors change with this open LA that just widens as you walk through it. And I think that's, we submitted these more technical detailed drawings to the city, which are all uploaded. We have plans of the buildings, more details on the units and the large window sizes for the elevations, and the different unit counts. I don't think I want to necessarily or need to get into that, but all that information is there. And the last thing I think we put together a video here of the project, which we will certainly give you the link for, but it kind of gives you a 1 minute walkthrough, animated through the project. So I'm going to play that right now, and I think that'll be all we need, or all I have left to say. So. So I hope you get a good understanding of what the project's about through these images, and I think that I appreciate you spending your evening listening to us. Thanks.
Dave, you're muted.
I know that. Yep. Chris, anything? We have a number of questions that have been collected in the chat function. Anything you want to say before we start dealing with questions?
Yeah, I think yeah, I've seen the questions come in, and some of the questions I would just say, like, as we'll be able to answer. Some of them we won't, and we'll just write them down and see if we can think about them. I mean, some of them I'm not sure what to say, and so there will be things like that, but other ones we'll do our best to answer questions as we go along here.
Do you want to be the one to read the questions, or do you want me to read them out, or?
I can, whatever format you want, Dave, I can go through and read them and then assign them to either myself or Frank or Mackenzie. And
why don't I take the lead on it, and I'll skip over the ones that are more comments, although Dan, If you could, before the evening is over, copy the chat function so we can just give that text
I-
file to Danco.
I will, that's part of the recording. I'll mail that around. Yes.
Thank you.
That'd be great. Thanks.
So Byron Vonthal asked, does this include electric vehicles? That's with regard to your zero net energy project.
Yes, we have 14 shown right now in the plans. We will also be able to have electric vehicle conduit ready for more. And I think Chris can speak to a benefit that he's seeing in being able to install 14 or more electric vehicle charging stations.
Well, I think the question was, does it include electric vehicles,
Well,
not electric vehicle charging stations?
It was actually charging station, and I was wondering if the solar panels would be used for the energy for the charging stations.
I don't think we, potentially, most of our projects we focused on the residential units, although the last couple, because we've had roof spaces or capacity to do so, we have been able to take care of the common areas, and there's actually a lot of reasons to do that. And so if it's as part of the house meter, I would say, yes, we will. There are a number of different options around electrical vehicles. I know there's ride share systems. I know there's Tesla stations, things like that. We're not really envisioning Tesla stations or anything to that nature. I think these would all be private. But yeah, I would say likely it will be. It's a great comment.
Teddy Herzog asks about how to take a left out of the project to head south onto McDowell. I know Frank was maybe unsure on that one, but I think I remember from last night's presentation, it's the southern entrance and exit from the project where you will be allowed to make a left onto McDowell. Is that correct?
That's correct, Dave. I tried to jump in when Frank mentioned that, but I was having I think my computer is tired from this week's.
Oh, and it may be here. I just haven't seen your response yet, but yeah. Okay.
No, I tried to say it and nobody was hearing me. So I read this now. It sounds like I have audio. So yes, that is correct. On the southern entrance, the southern access to the site, that would be an all-way turn, left, right turn. On the northern access that's shown, it would be a right turn in, right turn out only.
And then Heather also notes that the video that would not play tonight because it requires too much bandwidth is also available on the city website.
It will be. I will have it posted up
Okay.
there.
And I'll be including it in the next Know Before You Go email, so you have 2 ways to get to it. Let's see. Tanya asks about, could the parking be covered with solar panels for net metering and possible microgrid connection in the future, as well to prevent heat island effect from the asphalt and coverage from the rain?
Yes, and part of what we do is we work to use the building roof space to produce the electricity and size it accordingly. But for instance, in this project, we do have quite a bit of roof space because it's a large project, but we haven't actually sized the system. But our project in Arcata, we were not able to achieve net zero with the roof, so we did just that. We provided carports, and they're actually combination carports, solar panel systems that made up the difference to generate the remainder of the electricity needed to go net zero.
The higher they're located, the better, because they're free from shadows from other buildings. So that's always the first choice, is to get them up on the roof.
But currently we haven't put any of them in there, but it's possible we could do that. We're always trying to balance, cost of the project. We've done a few projects where we're over generating, so we've sized too much, and it just goes back on the grid and there's no credit given for it. And so we try to size it right so that we're just generating exactly what we need on the site.
Okay. Gino Mazzotti has a couple of questions, starting with the 1.3 parking ratio. He doesn't indicate whether he thinks that's too big, too small, or just right, but perhaps you can respond to how you view it.
Go ahead, Frank.
I can mention, if I could mention that, obviously, if you look at my examples below, that I think it's too few for apartments or houses that have 3 bedrooms and potentially 3 to 4 drivers within an apartment. You're allotting 1.2 parking spaces. And I know last night I attended the meeting last night with the Planning Commission, and the idea was, people are going to be riding bikes and taking the SMART train. And I just don't think that's a very realistic concept. I think because the SMART train parking is going to be in the same vicinity and shared, that there needs to be at least 2 parking spaces, if not 3. Otherwise, you're going to have people vying for parking on McDowell, walking at night in the rain with children to their apartments or to the complex. So I don't think this is planned correctly. 1.3 parking spaces per housing unit doesn't seem realistic to me. Thank you.
Chris or Frank, do you want to respond?
I could start. This debate comes up pretty much on every project. There's groups that are pushing us to do less parking. In fact, the state tax credit program only allows you to provide a certain number of parking spaces in terms of eligible cost. If you go over that amount, they penalize you. And so we're always trying to balance, because I hear you. I definitely hear what you're saying and understand what you mean. We actually have a project up here in Arcata that it's a family project, and it's not as walkable or bikeable, and people were fighting over parking spaces. But I think, with this site and having access to transit, not only rail, but bus, and potentially some of the systems that we can put in place through the HSC program, ride sharing, improve bikeable pathways into town and things like that, that it will work. We always try to push the limits, but also balance exactly what you said. There will be families, people will want to have cars, but if we build the facility as it is and we disclose this up front, look, this is your parking situation. You need to organize your lives around this. Then I think people will get that, and they will move in and they will understand what they have in terms of parking. We will provide other resources, bike spaces, ride shares, transit passes is one of the things that the HSC program we can incorporate into that. And then, we thought about that. We had more parking spaces when we started, but we started talking to the HSC folks about financing, and it's very much driven on greenhouse gas emission reduction, and less parking. And so we eliminated some of the parking. And we know that there are spaces in the site that if we really got into a conflict later on, we could convert to parking, the sort of overflow. We also had, conversations, or we've been thinking about the train station's parking lot is definitely going to be underutilized some of the time. And could there be a way that we set up an agreement with them at certain hours for visitors and stuff like that? So I think, I love the question. I love the debate. I want everybody to buy into, wherever we land. We're open for more, but also we're clear that one of the reasons this project is going to get funded is because we are going to push the tables, and we are going to provide other alternative means of transportation.
Could I ask just a follow-up to that? Why is it 131 rather than 75 units to make it a more inhabitable and I think a better project altogether? Who came up with the 131, and why is that an important number versus, let's say, 80 or 75 units? In that space, it seems to me it would be a better environmental footprint altogether. Why 131?
Well, density requirements for one. The sites actually were under the maximum density for the site, and it is, considered a TOD site. And so I think, we're hearing folks want more density. We really tried to balance it out to make it livable, and not too dense, but also not so low density that we're wasting, space near public transportation and other amenities. I don't know if you want to add to that, Frank.
No, I think that's right. We were trying to find a balance, but at the same time, we're really trying to provide as much housing and balance it with as much open space and livability. We don't want to underhouse if we have the opportunity.
And I add from staff consideration too, when Chris and his team first started talking to staff about this project, I think they had 110 units, which was the same number of units as the previously approved project on this site, the Corona residential project, and staff really encouraged them to go denser, to go taller. I think that originally it was 3 stories, and we pushed them to try to look at, put another story on it, go to 4-story, try to add more units in an intention to try to focus the density in this area around the station and support the ridership and get the increased density.
That's right.
Thanks, Heather. Mario then had a follow-up question on walking score for the neighborhood and anything you could do to increase the walking score for your project.
When you say walking score, I don't know that I follow.
Oh, it's a concept, I forget who manages it, where every piece of property in the country is measured from 0, meaning you can't go anywhere on foot, to 100, meaning all of your amenities are near at hand. Basically, anything 60 and above is considered a walkable setting. And I'm guessing right now your site does not get there just because it's fronting on arterials, et cetera. The more retail you'd provide would improve your walk score, let's say.
And I think it's also important in this site to think about the walk score, not just in terms of what it is today, but in terms of what we're going to develop over time. This is an area that is ripe for improvement and investment to make this walk score much higher. This is kind of one of the first projects coming in adjacent to this station site. There is a lot of potential, and I think as things develop, as more density will support more commercial activity, which will then support more transit, which will then improve the walk score.
I would definitely agree with that. Anything you might want to add to that, Chris?
Well, I was just going to say that as part of the HSC program, one of the ways in which you receive points is to improve walkability from the site to other services and amenities. So if there, which we're going to brainstorm with the city staff on in the next coming weeks, about areas within the city, sidewalks, crosswalks, areas that really aren't walkable right now and need some improvements that we can tie to this project to make it more walkable. So that is an effort that we're going to be going through in the very near future to position ourselves to score well for this project. And some of those, and part of that funding can help to make those improvements.
And I'll just add, Dave, real quick before we move on to the next question. Some of you might remember that last year we applied for PDA designation around this station. And part of the reason we did that also was to make Petaluma eligible for funding for those type of improvements, the sidewalk improvements, the pedestrian, the connectivity. And the way we drew that out was we drew it kind of long and narrow along McDowell, and then we also modified the PDA around priority development area, around the downtown station to pull that up Washington, recognizing that wouldn't it be nice if the distance really isn't that far, but it feels so far because of the way that area is developed. It's not a pleasant place to walk down McDowell. It's not pleasant to walk down Washington right now. So the way we did that was in an effort to make the city eligible to apply for funding, grant funding, to do some infrastructure improvements in those areas. So that, along with looking at partnering with funding through sustainable communities, all of these things are kind of at play to try to continue to increase the walkability, the bikeability, the transit, all of those aspects, and make this a much more walkable area.
And just to finish up the walk score conversation, I was able to pull up the webpage very quickly. And remember, 60 is sort of where you truly become close to car or ability to be car independent. For this site, it's a 35 on car dependency, meaning most errands require a car. 31 for transit, saying a few nearby transit, public transportation options. And then 54 on bikeable, some bike infrastructure. So it's actually considered a more bikeable site than it is walkable or transit friendly. Just not that those numbers are perfect, but that's the way the algorithm views it. Janice Cater Thompson asked, how many of the units or how many ADA units on site?
Frank just walked away and he's going to answer that.
Sorry about that, Frank. How many ADA units on site?
We basically all of the ground floor units have the capability of having 100% accessibility. Right now we're looking at about 20, I'd say. That's something that we the last couple of projects that we did all of them. And in this case, we're probably just going to focus on the ground floor units, which have separate entries. And then we have an elevator in the larger building where we could actually put more. So I think at this point, we haven't determined how many we'd have, but based on the last few projects, we try to, we really try to push that number as high as we can. Right now I see, 20 ground floor units of the whole site could be ADA accessible, and there's two types. There's we would be able to do adaptability, or they'd be 100% accessible. So, and there's a combination that we can do for both.
Well, and oddly enough, the next question from Chris Rebelo is elevators.
The larger building has an elevator, the 4-story buildings, but the 3-story buildings actually have an interior stair. So the stair goes up to basically 4 units per floor. So they're actually not corridor buildings like the large building. The smaller buildings, the stair goes up to basically like a little lobby, and there's 4 apartments on that floor. Go up the next floor, there's 4 apartments on that floor.
So the only elevators are in the 4-story building, which is pretty typical. Tanya Parnak asks about, is there a possibility for childcare on site? Could a space be created for that?
Yeah, and we talked about that last night too. There is a potential for childcare. One of the only site amenities that the tax credit program will allow you to build one and use government funding to provide. Most, like the coffee shop, for example, or any of the other spaces, will have to be funded with private capital, will not count as eligible costs for the tax credit program. So in essence, you'd have to have some sort of business model or someone making that offer that wants to lease that space to cover those costs. But in terms of childcare, that's not the case, and we're very open to it. We believe that childcare would be a great amenity for a large family project. We've struggled to find providers that can make it work. Although during last night's meeting, we got a lot of information, We even got emails today with some of the providers in town that might be able to help with that, and we're certainly going to explore that because we believe it's a great amenity for families. There are a lot of challenges in terms of having operators be able to make it, pencil as a business model, especially with low-income families because childcare is so expensive. But we certainly want to take a shot at it and try. We have not successfully done it to date on any of our projects. We are very much, we're working on a project in downtown San Jose right now, which is right in the heart of the city. And we have a childcare plan there. And we're struggling there. We do have some people that are interested, but we haven't put the deal together, if you will. But we're certainly open to it. And if there's groups, nonprofits, funding, we would build the space if we could be ensured that somebody could utilize it and we could actually make that offer.
Okay. And then a question, I think other people raised this before we finish tonight. Why not move the parking lot to be against the tracks? That it might actually be nicer to be against a SMART train rather than against a 4-lane arterial.
Hey Dave, before you go there, I forgot to mention, we're also exploring in the event that we aren't able to put a childcare project or deal together, we would explore and have done this on our other projects, an after-school program. So at least there is some space for kids to go to after school within the community room, and there's a program and somebody facilitating it and opportunities for kids to do things, productive after school. So we would definitely look into that, and I think we're planning that.
Thank you. Thank you. And then the question about moving the parking lot back toward McDowell and putting the units closer to the SMART train because the SMART train's a better neighbor.
Well, from my perspective, we have, and then I'll let Frank comment because really that for him, I think was an automatic, but we have noise issues. So we want to keep the residential units away from the tracks due to noises that come from the train operation. In addition to that, we were really trying to hide the parking from the streetscape so that that's not the first thing you see when you come off of the street is a parking lot. So that was the thinking, I believe. Is there anything you want to add to that, Frank?
No, I mean, that's primarily it. Yeah, we were trying to make the parking more discreet and not have empty parking and lots of night lighting, in the front of the buildings.
Okay. The EV charging we've addressed. The question these are all rental units, and I can confirm that is correct.
Yes.
Let's see. Sorry, some of these are just comments, which of course we'll make sure we get in your hands. Suzanne Tucker points out that there is another somewhat similar residential project a little further south on McDowell. That would be the, I've drawn a blank on the name. He asks about how those residents feel about noise from McDowell or from the train, presumably as an example of the kind of comments you'd get. Are you familiar with that project, and have you asked that question?
Can you say it one more time, Dave?
Sorry, there's another similar multifamily project a little further south on McDowell that would be subject to both street noise and train noise. So the question is, are you aware of that project? Have you consulted with that project regarding what the noise issues at your project might be?
What's the name of the project?
It's a PEP housing project, and can anybody help me?
Yeah, I forget. I feel like the name changed somewhere through the entitlement process, but I think it's a senior housing, and it was named after
Tim Kellgren.
Kellgren Housing.
I think I know which project you're talking about. I have not talked to them, no.
I don't think they have the tracks because the tracks cross right south of this property. So they do have McDowell, but they don't have the tracks behind them.
Yeah, well, tracks would definitely be other side of the street. I forget how far away they are by the time you get down to that site. But
and one issue about the tracks is also that because there's a station there's going to be decelerating, accelerating stopping, door noises and the crossing signals. So it's not only the train, but it's the infrastructure for that stop that actually creates a good amount of noise.
And just to note, we do have 2 other projects on the tracks in Santa Rosa. One that Raul Brokaw Frank has designed, and another one that we worked with the Hedgepeth group on. So we have been, we do have experience designing next to the tracks and and decibels and our sound systems and wall assemblies and how we design the building for noises and such. So this isn't our first go around, but I don't know if that helps. We do have experience there.
Okay. Carol Eber asked about will McDowell have sidewalks? I mean, I know from your plan that shows that we do have sidewalks fronting the project. Are there any thoughts to have sidewalks on other places along McDowell where there are not currently sidewalks?
Well, you mean not adjacent to our project?
Adjacent to your project.
Oh, adjacent to our project? Yes, the project will be fully, sidewalks will be fully adjacent to the project, yes.
Excuse me, I guess by adjacent, I meant not necessarily your frontage, but the unsidewalked portions either side of your project.
Not sure I follow. Do you know what he's saying, Heather?
Well, so this project does incorporate the separated multi-use path along McDowell, and that was something that came out of the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee recommendations for the last project. Instead of having a sidewalk and an on-street class 2 bike facility on McDowell, with the last project, PBAC recommended that there instead be a separated multi-use path along McDowell. So there is that. They have carried that forward. I would also say there are some improvements that will come with this project, such as the crosswalks at Corona and McDowell, like the previous project had, making that connection on Corona where the sidewalk kind of peters out I think it's kind of half block on Corona before you get to the station. So some of those areas are proposed to meet the same conditions that the previous project approvals did. Additionally, I would say, and I think Chris mentioned this, one of the things we're looking at is the grant funding through the sustainable communities. And if there's, that's something we're going to start talking about, is where are some of the other areas in this neighborhood that have sidewalk or connectivity issues. I know we heard from the neighbors across the street that there was real issues with the sidewalk. Yes, there's a sidewalk, but then there's a pole in the middle of the sidewalk. And so really to walk along the sidewalk, there's areas that you have to actually kind of go into the street, much less if you are in a wheelchair or pushing a stroller or anything that's kind of larger than what you can squeeze by. So we will, the city along with Danco will be looking at those opportunities. And if there's opportunities for us to partner on grant funding to look not only at this project, but at some of the connectivity in this area, we will be looking at that.
Dave, Matt? Yeah, also last night discussed quite a bit of this and Heather got into it, but the grant funding that the development is looking for will solicit partners, and having other than just the developer sign on to the grant makes it more competitive. And what that gets for the partners is opportunities. Like if SMART is a partner in this, it makes it more attractive and they get cash out of the deal, though, you run out of cash quickly, but they would have amenities they're able to add. The city would be a partner, and have amenities they're able to add, such as sidewalks. I think the sidewalk discussion was because there was a protest march with the first Corona development that walked from Corona to Old Redwood Highway to prove how unwalkable it was. And so I'm sure that putting sidewalks in that stretch before they start the pavement project there in another 1.5 or 2 years, will continue to be a topic in the community to be sure that all areas become more walkable. But another thing that hasn't been dropped into this is that SMART came to the PBAC, that term keeps coming up, Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee. And SMART was there at this month's meeting explaining how close they are to the next piece of MUP, multi-use path. And that extends from South Point, that's a bit south there on McDowell, extends from there into Pengrove. And so that will be a bike path that runs right through this development, but it also does quite a bit for connecting the existing piece that goes under the freeway. So from this development, bicycling, you're nearly downtown right away, and you're nearly headed to Pengrove, a big destination, but right away. So lots of things come together with this. Not all of it that the developer can be responsible for or fund, but this makes opportunity for the city and other agencies. I think, Dave, you're hot on this, is that transit could sign on this, and transit improvements get made. Bus improvements can be one of the signatures, and perhaps even the health center, which hasn't got brought up tonight either. Thank you.
Very good. Mario G asks about what I think his question is, the coffee shop location, suggesting it would be more pleasant to have it closer to the train station and further from McDowell. Any comments?
We had that question last night, and we felt that was just a more viable location for it, but at the same time, there's a certain modularity to the design. So we were going to look at that, see if we could change it and move it to the corner of another building, or make it on the opposite side of the same building so that it's more accessed from the sort of tenant side walkway. But we were considering engaging it with the street, and it has access to the future SMART train parking lot. We just thought that it would be a little bit more visible and viable as a retail space.
But we're going to look at it.
Yeah, we're going to look at it. Yeah,
we're going to study it.
Yeah.
Okay. Gino Muzzati has 3 questions. I think the first we've already dealt with, but then he continues into what are the anticipated, I assume that's rental costs for each home size? Will there be occupancy limits based on the number of bedrooms? Who is in charge of enforcing these limits, such as through CC&Rs? And then does Danco pay a living wage to the construction workers?
Okay, there's a lot there. So let me start with the rents, but you're gonna have to give me a second because I'm gonna pull them up here on my computer. So while I'm pulling them up, yes, Danco pays a living wage. There's a high likelihood that this project will be prevailing wages due to some of the funding sources that we're going to get. Specifically, if we were able to win the HSC funding, then the entire project would be paid state prevailing wages. So there's that. And then, but even if we're not paying state prevailing wages, yes, we pay very well. Are the rents, there are occupancy limits based on bedroom size, and those are regulated by the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee and the HCD or other funding sources. Every funding source generally that goes into the project would have their own auditing mechanism, but these projects are, when you do them, there's a regulatory agreement that's recorded on site, and we're responsible to keep them affordable for a period of 55 years, and we're audited every year. Our files are audited. Someone comes to the site, they look, they go through, they walk through units, they make sure that we're maintaining them, that we're keeping them up, and there's enforcement if we're not. And so for a, I'm just going to go through, just give you the brush strokes. For a 1-bedroom unit at 60%, the rent is $1,200. At 30%, it's $639. For a 2-bedroom unit, this is the range. For a 2-bedroom unit at 60%, it's $1,534. And for a 30%, it's $767. A 3-bedroom unit, it's $1,772 and $886 for a 30% unit. And that's maximum. So it can be less than that. And if we're oftentimes, well, for sure, if we're working with the city, or sorry, the county, and we have project-based vouchers on the project, or one of our grant funds has a capitalized operating reserve subsidy. Some of those folks that are going to come in that are at the very, very low incomes will be lower than those rents, because $700 for a unit for somebody that's at a very low income is even too much, because Sonoma County's rents are very high.
Bill Reinhardt asked whether the open space amenity areas will be available to public access. Public.
Well, I haven't really thought of that. I suppose if it made sense, generally speaking, they're private. I don't know that we don't, I mean, if visitors come, we don't really have an enforcement, but only if there was problems, we would. But mostly they're private properties. They're not gated. This property is not going to be gated or anything like that. And people are allowed to have visitors and guests. But to make it public space, I don't think that would be necessarily a good idea, unless it made sense, like there was a park or one of the areas that was directly adjacent to the the station. I could see that we could make an area like that open to the public. But we want our residents to feel safe too, and that it's their home, and that it's their children are out there playing, and we want to have some enforcement if things get out of hand, and that it's private property and we can ask people to leave, things like that.
Patricia Webb asks about, will you have rain collection tanks?
Well, we will meet all of the stormwater standards, which are extremely rigorous in California. But we try not to do water tanks. We really try to incorporate rain gardens and pervious, paving and more pervious surfaces, and do tanks. Tanks are kind of, I mean, we've done them, and especially in more urban sites where we don't have as much open space. But to me, putting tanks in is kind of like a design failure, and that you can really do it all with rain gardens and good landscaping and pervious paving and things like that. And we really work to do that, and we've been successful with that. So tanks are expensive too, and they just drive the cost up, and they got to be maintained. And it's not our preference. But we're early on in the project, I will say, although we have done the numbers, and we don't have any tanks in the design. Is that right, Frank?
Yeah, no, that's right. Everything is being filtered on site. So all the stormwater treatment is being filtered through biofiltration planters and things like that. So they're not collecting it, but at the same time, it's controlled.
Yeah.
Calculated to minimize any ponding issues or anything like that.
Okay.
But I will say, our civil engineers, they were talking about tanks in the beginning, and we redirected their thinking on that one.
As administrative notice, now 8:52. This has been the best attended Zoom session for Know Before You Grow yet, and the longest, but I'm starting to see a few yawns. I'm going to suggest we go till 9 o'clock. And then Dan will have made a copy of the entire chat that he can send on to Chris and the rest of the Danco team. Perhaps you can get some responses back to us that I can send out by email when available. So Let's just do another 3 or 4 questions and call it a night. Does that sound okay?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Carol Eber asked, why not mixed income as opposed to all low income residents?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get that question a lot, and we're not opposed to having some mixed income units, but financing for these projects are available through the the various financing agencies, HCD and tax credit, and they don't give you credit for market rate units. So we would have to raise private capital outside of getting tax credits and HCD funding. Will only fund units that are at 80% or below. And so what we try to do is, if that's, the city has an incredible need for affordable housing. I mean, they are not meeting their RENA numbers, and this project helps a lot with that. However, that being said, we're sensitive to it. We like to have a mix, a range of unit mixes on our sites. We think it's good practice. And so we can do some 80% units, some 60% units, 50s, 40s, 30s, and intend to do that. But going to market, we haven't wanted to do that, but if there was a strong push there from the community or the city, or and that's where it was moving, I'd say we would figure it out. But right now we're proposing a mix of 80s, 60s, 50s, 40s, and 30s.
Okay. Will Burns asked about the possibility of another building where the dog run and barbecue area are now located, thinking it might provide some sound shielding for the interior open space at the center of the site.
Well, again, I mean, I'm not opposed to moving buildings around or anything at this point, but that would mess with the parking for sure and make the project more dense than it already is. So, I mean, noted, I think we can talk about, like, could we make that work? If we would change the project, we'd be back to the drawing board. But, I don't know. What do you say, Frank? Any comments on that?
Yeah, well, we were trying to keep the buildings away from that side as well. So again, we were providing a buffer with the dog park and the barbecue area, which is actually a nice swath of open space. And again, we were trying to keep the buildings from that side as much as possible, especially close to the what I call north. I guess is where the train station would be. So I don't think we wanted to actually put any residences closer to the train station than we needed to.
Tanya Parnak asks whether the metal siding will provide adequate soundproofing from the traffic noise from McDowell.
Well, the assemblies that we use are actually that is one of several components, but having it being a reflective surface in combination with mineral wool insulation, and we usually have a high grade sheetrock or double sheetrock on the perimeter wall. So what we try to achieve is a mathematical sound control, so that every unit has is down to 45 decibels from outside noise. So it does contribute, but it's not the only element. In fact, the elements within the wall and on the interior side of the wall provide more sound shielding than the outside. And of course the windows too, which would be double pane, probably a high STC, again, to try to achieve the 45 decibels for the unit requirement.
Okay, we'll just do 3 more questions and call it a night. Mario G asks about wildlife, rabbits, hawks, and deers that are currently on the space. And does the developer have a plan to safely relocate any wildlife?
Well, I don't know, Heather, is it when the previous CEQA analysis was done, is there a report that talks about that? I mean, if there's a concern there, then yes. I haven't seen any reports that indicate that.
I don't remember off the top of my head if we had a bio report for this site, given its disturbed nature. I don't believe there's any trees on the site. It's been used as a kind of a trekking yard. It's
Reuse, yeah.
gravel disturbed. So I don't recall off the top of my head if we had a bio report as with the previous project or not.
Well, on other projects we have done, that if there has been issues, we absolutely would mitigate, or one project we have has relocation of wildlife in it, but we generally try not to build on sites that have a high concentration of that. And like Heather said, this is sort of a reuse site, and it's gravel lot. I'm not aware of any concerns there.
Bev Alexander asks about the basketball court, wondering if there are many people who would use it, or would an additional park or gathering space perhaps be more useful?
Oh, it's very popular. We put them on all of our projects, and we don't just do the, kind of the lame basketball court that's got a bent backboard. We put in a full, NBA style backboard that goes up and down, and lights out there for, so that kids can play it till 9 o'clock or something like that. But yeah, we try to provide spaces for our residents, for the younger kids, from the toddlers to the as far as to the teenage kids for basketball. I mean, we're required, part of the funding requires that we provide spaces for all age children to recreate and play, and basketball is very popular amongst the the teenage kids, and even some of the adults.
And then we'll finish with an environmental question. Terry Shore asks, will the project go through CEQA or use SCEA through SB 375?
Do you want me to tag that first?
That'd be a great
Chris?
one, Heather. Thank you.
Yeah. So this project has been submitted under AB 2162. And AB 2162 is an assembly bill that was passed at the state level, became effective in January of 2019. And it has certain criteria for housing projects, and one of which being 25% supportive housing units, and also being a lower income project. There's some other criteria, but for projects that meet the criteria of AB 2162, it provides for streamlined ministerial review and CEQA exemption. So it would be a project, if it is determined, and we're still in the first 30 days of this project coming in, so we're still reviewing it at the staff level. But if it is determined eligible, it would not be considered a project under CEQA.
Yeah, and then just to add to that, because we're in such a housing crisis, which we are, statewide, nationwide, these two, there's this act, the AB 2162, and then SB 35 that were passed by the state government to help planning jurisdictions, developers, because a lot of projects were being stopped, and some projects were being stopped, in particular this one, because of very low income residents that were being proposed to live there. So that wasn't helping. That wasn't helping the problem. And so the state stepped in and said, well, that's not going to happen anymore. We're going to back you and make sure that these housing developments happen and they get done. And so they passed that legislation, and it's very well being utilized throughout many communities in the state now. And this this would be our second projects that we're processing under AB 2162.
And I would add that under AB 2162, there is no required public hearings, public outreach, but in collaboration with Danco, staff has talked to Danco and said, hey, we really want to, be transparent about this project, solicit input from the public, solicit input from the Planning Commission. And Danco has been great in stepping up to that, was part of the Planning Commission informational session last night. Here at Know Before You Grow tonight, they're doing a neighborhood meeting on November 30th. So we're trying to get as much input and transparency with this as part of the process, even though it's not required, so that it is getting that similar input to projects that aren't being processed under this.
And
So
the
I
other,
want to give kudos to Chris and his team for, you know, being partners in that.
well, thank you, Heather. But also I wanted to say too, just to point out though, we do AB 2162, you do have to meet all the development standards though. You've got to follow all of the rules with the current zoning and general plan allows. So you can't come in and, you know, present something that's completely not appropriate on a site. It has to be already within the city or local jurisdictions, you know, vision, and you can't go outside of those boundaries.
Yeah, true.
With that, I think we need to call a halt to the evening. This has been a marvelous turnout, participation. It's been fun to watch the chat room. Actually, when I began reading questions, we had 35 comments queued up. We're now at 76, so I've lost ground in our entire Q&A period, which is great. Well, one, the door's always open. Chris and team, if you ever want to come back and run the next version by us, we'd love to hear it. And thank you for being here this evening. And thank you everyone from Petaluma who participated. Good meeting.
Thank you for having us, and appreciate all the positive comments, and I agree, it's been great to watch it.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate all the feedback. Bye, everybody.
Thanks so much. This was really good.